So we're going to start off with our patina base first. I went ahead and spray painted it this teal color. That's by Krylon. I usually use Rust-Oleum, but that's what I had, so that's what I used. And then I'm going to need my metallic gold by Rust-Oleum, and I also have a spray bottle with rubbing alcohol inside of it. Now my base, I went ahead and spray painted the day before, so that way it was nice and dry for this next process that we're about to do to it. So the next thing you want to do is whatever color you used for your base, you want to take that and you want to go ahead and give it a good coating all over your tumbler. Then you're going to take your metallic color and you're going to just randomly spritz that around the base itself. Then you want to go right into it. You don't want to let it dry. You're going to take your rubbing alcohol and spritz everything down really, really good. So as you can see, I'm spritzing it down really good. You want to spritz it until everything kind of starts to shift. You're going to see that gold kind of start to drip and move around. But what's pretty much happening is the rubbing alcohol is kind of breaking that surface tension of the metallic, and it's making it kind of fade down and drip down instead of staying in one spot, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you guys. But you have to work pretty fast with it. So if you find that a certain area is just not moving the way that you want it to, like it just went ahead and dried on you, go ahead and come back through with some more metallic, some more of your regular spray paint, and just kind of do the process again. You don't have to fill up the whole tumbler, just whatever area you feel like it needs a little bit more of that particular look. So I pretty much just kept going until I got about the look that I would like. I really like how that is looking for sure. So the next thing I wanted to do was add a little bit more gold speckles to it. So I took my gold and I do that nifty little trick to add splatters where I just hold the nozzle down just ever so gently until it's kind of spitting and sputtering out with the color. And then I filled that up a bit more with some more of this just gold speckles all over the place. But it gives it just this really soft antique look to it, and I just absolutely love it. And I can't wait to work with different colors with this kind of look for sure. Now, after I get done doing this, I'm going to set that off to the side to dry, and then we're going to take it inside and get its first coating of epoxy over top. All right, it's nice and dry, and look at that. I love it so, so much. But you know me, I gotta keep going. So of course I wanted to add some sparkles to it before we do our painting. And I also wanted to add a bit more of a vibrant gold to it. So I'll show you what I do here in a second. So I have 20 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm gonna go ahead and add just a very tiny amount of Jupiter. I think it did 2 little dashes of Jupiter into my epoxy. And just a touch of Magic Key. I absolutely love Magic Key. I don't know. I say this about all of them, but it is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites to kind of add a little extra sparkle because it has a hint of gold, it has a hint of purple. It almost looks like it glows in a way. I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and stir that up really good. And I'm going to apply all 20 milliliters of epoxy over top of my tumbler. Now, 20 milliliters does seem like a lot because we're just going over paint, but I'm going to be putting down some inks here in a second, and I want my inks to have enough room to spread out and not clump up. So if you don't have enough epoxy on your tumbler, your inks will just kind of bunch up and kind of coagulate. And that's kind of what it looks like. So you definitely need a bit more epoxy so that way it has that free-flowing look that we're after. All right, so on the turner, I already hit it up with my torch to pop all those little micro bubbles, and now we're ready to add our inks. So the ink I am going to use, I got from Jen's Crafted Gems. It's an alloy color, so it's just like a gold. If she doesn't have it available, you could also use Tim Holtz. He has an alloy gold as well, so that should work just fine too. And of course, you also want to make sure that you shake these up really good, no matter what it is. Whatever type of alcohol ink you use, you want to make sure you shake it up to get that coloring flowing throughout the bottle there. So now we're just going to take it and drop it randomly. I don't want too much. We're just adding a little bit of extra dimension. It definitely gives it just an extra kind of shine to it. So the paint we did is more of a matte look, and then this alloy will be more of like a shinier version of it. So now that we have that down, we're going to go ahead and take our blow dryer and we're going to start blowing these colors around. After I warmed it up a bit with my blow dryer, I took it completely off of my turner, and I found it worked best doing it in this manner where you could see how I'm blowing everything around and tipping it up as far as I can, and then I tip it back up onto itself and just letting those inks kind of swirl and twirl and kind of match up with that look that we already have going on the base itself. Now, after I put it back under the turner, we're going to do something very similar to what we did to the paint. We're going to put it back onto our turner and we are going to spritz it with our rubbing alcohol, just like we used earlier. And what's going to happen is it's going to do exactly like it did on our spray painted base, and it's going to break the surface of those inks and it's going to create more of that textured look, almost kind of like how we do the beach tumblers, so it kind of gives it that look to it. But I pretty much did just a couple rotations with my rubbing alcohol on this. You don't want to add too much at one time. You just want to break that surface tension, a couple rotations, and what you want to do after that is you want to let it sit and kind of mingle and keep doing what it needs to do. And then you can always come back through and maybe spritz it just a few more times here and there if you need to as it continues to cure, just to break that surface tension a bit more and add more of that texture. But I think that looks good for me. So now all I'm going to do is let that cure and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. But even just that, I mean, what a fun base and ready for any type of kind of spring look for sure. All right, so I know I wanted to add some white flowers to this. So I said I have my white acrylic paint, and then I need another paint to kind of blend to make it kind of darker. Well, I'll show you guys why I need that in a minute. But so I have this, it's called Beach Glass. I'll make sure to put it in the description box for you guys, but it's just from Michaels, and it's a really good coloring for shadowing for this particular color base that we're doing. I also have a yellow that I ended up not using because that was going to be for the centers, but I ended up not using that. And I also have Jade by Pop of Color, which makes for a very good green for our leaves. So getting started with our flowers first, we're going to put down a bit of our white acrylic paint, and we're also going to put down a bit of our beach glass for our shadowing. And for these flowers, I want to use, I absolutely love this brush. It just came in a kit. I got a kit with like a bunch of different brushes from Michaels, but it's like a little number 2, and I want to say it's a round, they call it a round brush, but it works perfect to make beautiful petals. So these first set of flowers that we're going to be working with are the ones that are going to be kind of in the back of everything. So we're going to work from the back and make our way forward with our painting. So you want to take your color, your beach glass color, and you want to mix it with a 50-50 with your white. And then we're going to start making our petals. Now these petals are extremely easy. I'm just going to do pretty much like a 6-petaled flower. So just 3 on the top and then 3 coming along the bottom there. So you just want to envision an imaginary center because we're going to add those centers on here at the end after everything's all dry. But that's pretty much the basis of these flowers. That's pretty much all you have to do is just mix your white with your shadow color. Now, another thing I want to talk about while I'm painting, you guys can watch me paint while I talk about this, but your shadow color. So the reason why I chose this is because it matched the color scheme I have. So I chose this kind of greenish teal color. It's a pastel color. So let's say you did a blue. So you want to try to find a pastel blue that could be your shade color. Again, and a pink, so like a pastel pink I would use for my shade color for that. And that's what you would work with this instead of the beach glass if you were doing a separate color. But I also want you guys to keep in mind that we're just replicating nature, and nature isn't perfect. So your flowers don't have to be perfect either. I have some flowers on here that only have 4 petals, So again, you just want to just think of it as this is just your back flowers, and there's going to be flowers painted over the top of this. You just need filler, pretty much, is all you're thinking about here. And it's perfectly okay after you get going if you feel like some just look a little too thin, because sometimes that acrylic is a bit thin on our brush. It's okay to come back through and add some more paint right over top. That's the joy of painting, right? All right, so we got our flowers established. We're making our moves here, and we want to think about structure. We want to think about how our flowers are going to be placed on here. So I pretty much visualize a center point. So where I started is pretty much my center point, and I'm going to have the most of my flowers in that particular area. And then as I go up to the rim and as I go down to the bottom, it's going to become more sparse. So I only want a few flowers here and there versus having a grouping of flowers. So before I go ahead and fill in the center with the majority of the flowers, I go ahead and bring the flowers down just so that way I can kind of visually see how I want my flowers to be and if I need to add a little bit more here and there so that way it looks even on each side as I continue to go. But I'm just going to speed this up just a little bit more and I'm just going to let you guys kind of visually watch me work here. Another thing I wanted you guys to notice is that I'm not quite overlapping with these flowers that are underneath, not yet. With the flowers that are going to be over top is when I'm going to start overlapping the flowers on top of each other. But again, we just want a little bit of space in between these ones. So even up at the top, I just have like one or two going on up there because again, we're going to come back in and fill in those gaps and spaces with our brighter, whiter flowers. Now that I feel like we got a good momentum here with the amount of flowers at the bottom and the top is now when I'm going to come in and fill in the center a bit more with these flowers. And after I'm done doing that, I'm going to let that dry for a minute. Luckily, we're using acrylic paints, and because we're working with such a thin amount, it really doesn't take that long to dry. I don't want to really use my blow dryer too much on it. I find that sometimes it could crack the paint if it's dried too quickly. Now, after that dries, we're going to go ahead and add our greenery before we add our finishing detailed flowers. So I'm just going to use the same exact brush that I used for the flowers, and I am going to mix it up just a little bit. I'm going to take that jade and mix it up a little bit with some of the colors that I have there off to the side, just to make it a little bit lighter because it was just a little bit too dark for me. So I wanted it just a tad lighter than it was. So it's as easy as it looks, guys. You just put your brush, you take a bit of your coloring, you're gonna just place it simply down onto the tumbler itself and then just make a quick swoosh motion back, and it's gonna give you just a very simple leaf and add just a really nice touch of greenery in between everything. Again, I don't want to go too overboard with this, so I'm just going to simply come up in between some of the flowers. I'm going to come up to the top and do some. I'm going to go down to the bottom and do a few. I know for sure I don't want to add too much. Just a little bit really does go a long ways when it comes to the greenery portion. And one more thing I decided to add, I'm going to set that down, I'm going to let that dry. One more thing I decided to add before we do the final flowers is I wanted to come through and add some branches. Just a little bit of branches. I guess my flowers are on a tree. You know, that's where I imagined them, I guess. So I have this little liner brush I'm trying to get out to focus. It's just a little liner brush, and that's all we need to make just a few little squiggly branches poking through. So keeping with that light kind of airy look I'm going for, I chose Blush from Pop of Color. I just felt like it was just, it has a little brown to it, but it still has a little pink, so it kind of kept with the theme. So I took my liner brush and I'm going to roll it around in the paint, and then I'm going to simply roll it around on my little thing I have over there where I'm dabbing on my paints, just so that way I know that the paint is nice and smooth on my brush. I just remembered the word I'm looking for, my palette. There we go. So I'm showing you guys the motion I'm going to use. All I'm going to simply do is once I have my bristles placed down onto the tumbler surface, I'm simply going to roll my brush back and forth in between my fingers, and it's going to give it more of an organic squiggly look because we don't want the sticks to be just a line. We want it to be kind of squiggly because that's how they are in nature. And again, I'm just going to focus these branches kind of more up at the top. So a few at the top, and then I'm going to do a few at the bottom as well. And then once that dries a little bit, we're going to come back through, and of course we're going to add some more flowers over top, kind of making sure that it gets anchored down a little bit better. And we'll add some extra leaves onto it if we need to as well. But I think this is just a really great idea to kind of give it a little bit more structure. Like, I don't know, I felt like it was a nice little touch, I guess. But if yours, you don't feel like yours belongs on a branch, you don't have to do a branch. You could just leave those spaces kind of empty and fill in your flowers from there. You don't have to do the branches if you don't want to. If you just don't feel comfortable doing it, or if you don't feel like it's going to look right, then don't do it. That's the beauty of art. There is no right or wrong when it comes to making it. All right, yet again, I let that dry. I think that's another thing with hand painting, is having to let everything dry in between. It can take a while. Now we are just going to make some more flowers, but this time we are going to grab pure white. We're not going to fade it out with any other colors. You want to grab the white only. So I'm going to start up high. I'm going to go ahead and add a few onto those branches we've just did. I'm also going to come through, and this is where you're going to start overlapping your flowers over top. But as I get going, you're going to really see how much more these white ones pop out over the ones that are more below. So those look a little bit more shaded, but you're really going to really start to see that effect take place here. So that's why when we choose our shading colors, we choose pastel colors versus a very vivid color, because this way with the pastels, it's just going to give us just slight, it's going to be just a little bit off, and it'll give it just so much more depth without it being so stark. Now after that, I wanted to add a few little buds onto the ends of the branches. So I'm just going to simply take that brush and just dab just a few little buds here and there. And then after that, I decided to add some of my petals, just kind of free flowing around the rest of the tumbler, just to kind of tie everything together. So again, just doing little dabs, just a little swish here and there around the back end. Then I'm going to take my liner brush one last time, and I'm just going to add a few just finishing details on my buds, kind of giving them some leaves right around them. And that's pretty much it for this portion of the painting. So I'm going to go ahead and set that off to the side and let that dry completely before we move on to the next step. Now after that dried, I wanted to add a few of these feathers that I've had sitting around. These are sticky sheets. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. I'll put it in the description box for you guys, but they're from Mr. Nola's Glitter, and I got these, gosh, I want to say like last year sometime, and I hadn't really used them, so I figured they'd go really well on this particular tumbler, especially with the quote that I want to use. I know for sure I wanted to add a few feathers to it. So again, I'm going right over top of the acrylic paints because I did such a thin amount, and I'm not going to be going over the flowers themselves. I'm going to be going over the back end of it instead. I felt comfortable enough that it wouldn't mess with the finish of these feathers at all. But I ended up adding about 4 of those all together on the back side, just a little bit. I felt was good. I felt like it was just really added that extra touch I really needed to kind of finish this off. All right, after I got those burnished down nicely, we're going to move right into doing the centers of our flowers. I have a bit of Mod Podge, and again, I'm going to use the same exact brush I used for the flowers themselves, and I'm going to dab a bit of that Mod Podge right into the center of each flower. Then I'm going to take my color and lemon, and I'm going to simply shake that onto the glue itself, tap it off really good, and there we go. We're getting our flowers put together. So as you're moving forward and you're doing these centers, I want you guys to keep in mind that not all of these flowers need to have a center. You can think of it as maybe the flower's tipped down or it's facing the opposite direction. So you're looking at the back side of the flower itself. Again, that's just going to add a lot more dimension and make these flowers look even more realistic and beautiful. So a good way to try to figure out which flowers need to look like what is the ones that are pure white definitely are going to have a center, and then the darker ones that were in the back, or the shadowy flowers that were in the back, just a few of those here and there are going to have centers, while some of them are not, and that will make it look more like they're tilted away from facing forward. There we go. And when I am done doing this, of course, yet again, we're going to set that off to the side to dry before we move on to the next step. Now, after that had dried, I went ahead and swept all the glitter off that needed to come off. There we go. And I spray sealed it down really, really well. And now I'm going to go ahead and add my decal. Now, my decal I did up myself. I'll make sure to put the font that I used because it's a very thin font, and I felt like it would go okay over the flowers. That's why I used it. If you're using a thicker font, you might need to go ahead and put a coat of epoxy over top of everything and then add your coat over top. But again, I felt comfortable enough that this was thin enough, it'd be just fine going over top of everything. Now, the reason why I chose this quote, it's by Bob Marley, it's Three Little Birds, is because I just felt like it really went with this particular tumbler. Every little thing is going to be all right. So I don't know. I just really liked it. It's a beautiful song. I don't know if you guys have heard it before, but you should. But I did break everything apart and kind of zhuzh everything around until I felt like it was lined up really well. So I'm not really going to show that in this video because I'm mainly focused on the flowers. You know, I wanted to show you guys how to paint the flowers and everything. So if you need a little bit more help with the text here, I can do just a very quick video that I can place off to the side for you guys if you need to. But before I apply my last finishing coats of epoxy, I am going to seal those letters down really well so that way they don't lift on me. Again, I'm going to put my last two finishing coats on, and she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video today. Thank you so much for being a part of my group. If you have any questions, just let me know down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.